Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. Today, I want to talk about, well, one of those humane situations of the war, all about the wives of the Russian mobilized. Ukrainian mobilized, they suffer, they go through the war, but currently there's a movement of the wives of mobilized happening in Russia, and they seem to be in an interesting position. Their protests cannot be oppressed, at least not openly, since their husbands and brothers and their relatives in general are out there in the front. And I don't feel much sympathy for them, but it's a thing that causes some instability in the political sphere of Russia. Now, by the way, a regular news episode is coming, each that I promised you this one, and I wanted to put some clarity on how these women think. First of all, on the 21st of November, the wives of those mobilized in Russian cities were organizing some rallies and other protests. Their main demand was obviously to bring home husbands sent to fight in the war in Ukraine. They were unhappy about the lack of deadlines and lack of everything, and that didn't really pan out that well, as they were actually just allowed to basically protest only in a culture house of one of the villages, one of the cities there. Previously, by the way, on November the 7th, I spoke about it, but just to remind you, on November the 7th, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, they had a rally in the center of Moscow dedicated to the October Revolution. Called on Muscovites to come to the rally, State Duma deputy from the Communist Party, Denis Parfenyov, among other things, wrote the following: "Some go to the front to defend their motherland, while others continue to shamelessly trade in the riches of our land and reap huge profits." And one Muscovite, Maria Andreeva, says, "We thought it was an invitation to visit, and we came." Her cousin and husband have been both mobilized. During the rally of the Communist Party, Andreeva and about 30 other women unfurled posters demanding the return of their mobilized husbands home. The action lasted only about 5 minutes, but it gained a lot of publicity. It was the first public demand on the wives of the conscripts to release their husbands from the front. The next few days, regional groups of mobilized wives were full of messages of organizing, messages to the mayor's office and various applications and all this stuff. And now, now they're trying to do something else, but they're facing some protests. In groups of mobilized wives, it was discussed that it seemed that they had managed to agree on a rally in Novosibirsk on November 19th, since within 3 days, and as established by law, the organizers did not receive a refusal to hold it. But a few days before the date of the rally, the refusal still came. The mayor's office's response states that the goal of the rally, to return those mobilized home, violates the principle of legality. What the violation was obviously not stated. In Krasnoyarsk, the authorities also refused to coordinate the rally, citing COVID restrictions, says Natalia. And in Chelyabinsk, they explained the refusal by saying that the application for the rally was submitted not in paper, but in electronic form, which was written on the blog Chelyabinsk of the Future. And again, in Novosibirsk, at the local cultural center, instead of a rally, a meeting with the authorities was held, behind closed doors. According to local publication Courier Sreda and Vestki, the police were on duty near the building, and everyone who came was checked with a metal detector and asked for documents confirming their relationship with the mobilized. Only 2 federal TV channels were able to attend the meeting. The rest of the media did not even receive accreditation. Neither the organizers nor the officials present reported on the specific results of the meeting, wrote Versk. Now, there are many other meetings like this, but weirdly enough, the response of this, for a while, at least, was the fact that, at least here in Novosibirsk, that, it is better to engage in dialogue and that we were listened to and our problems will be solved. None of their problems will be solved, obviously. But the main story was that some of them were promised money, because currently it seems that the big solution, which Putin tries to find for this whole situation, is just to throw money at the problem as usual and not to do anything, because you really can't, like I said at the beginning, can't punch them. But recently, after their whole, action and everything, they released a manifesto and a petition against this indefinite mobilization. And I bring you a translation of Medusa this time because, they published it, and otherwise, it's very important that I translate them correctly. Quote: They in the manifesto, the draftees' loved ones call on their fellow citizens for help. saying that the Russian government has turned its backs on soldiers and their families. These, by the way, were published on the Telegram channel Puchi Domoy, The Way Home. Quote, "We are being betrayed and exterminated by our own people. We were fucked over and you will be fucked over. All this time, all they showed us was lazy stability, reliability, and safety. We remember how the president promised that reservists wouldn't be called up, that only professional volunteers would fight in the special military operation. And then they sent our loved ones to Ukraine. The promises proved empty. Many will never return. Mobilization turned out to be a terrible mistake. We were punished for our law-abidingness. Behind the smokescreen of stability, our men pay with blood, and we pay with our health and tears." The statement's authors warn that nobody is immune to our loved ones' fate in the future. Though they go on to call the situation absurd and to criticize Vladimir Putin, though they also express hope that he will hear their pleas. The president has declared 2024 to be the year of the family. It's ironic, given that wives are crying without their husbands, children are growing up without fathers, and many have already become orphans. Meanwhile, a Satanist cannibal, side note from me, no, seriously, a Satanist cannibal who had eaten his neighbors or something, who reoffended after his first prison sentence, will be released again in 6 months, having atoned for his serial murders by fighting in a special military operation. Our president does have a sense of humor, after all. Apparently, our motherland is being liberated for the very best of society. Killers, drunks, migrants, and outrageously wealthy officials and their children. Speaking of whom, why aren't they in the trenches? The same Telegram channel shared the group's petition for the return of mobilized soldiers and the establishment of a maximum service term. The authors of the appeal note that they're, quote, not intended in rocking the boat and destabilizing the political situation in Russia. Now, here's the thing. I watched a lot of videos about this subject as well, and one thing that I saw was, at this point, you can even indirectly hear that the wives of the mobilized are, it's not even complaining, indirectly, how they're against the war, because I remember one of them saying, and that was in Michael Naki's show, how they, as women, as mothers, are instinctively against the war because, they didn't create their children to be killed in wars. They created them to be, to procreate once again. But they can't be openly against the war, so they always have to state that they just want, other people now to go out and die and murder and all this stuff. But this is a complex subject because, again, a lot of people don't feel any sympathy for them after all their husbands could have avoided mobilization, which back at the time apparently would cost you 3,500 rubles, which is about 35 euros or $40 or so. That's one thing. Other thing is that I think at least you can tell that some of them are actually against the war, but by how much and how should we treat them and how should this whole thing function? How much you should sympathize with them and what's their meaning in the current political situation and what's going on in their heads? Are we looking at it as something like another, women's march like happened in 1917, back in the revolution? Revolution always in Russia tends to start with women. Therefore, this is important. And this is why I do not feel exactly 100% competent to tackle this problem alone. Which is why I have Evita with me here. She'll explain a bit about herself as I introduce her. But I think we really need a feminine perspective on this one. But before we switch over to that, I'd like to remind you that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/theeasternborder, where if you like the show, you can go and become our patron and support us there. And also, if you go and click on our homepage, theeasternborder.lv, which we fixed, mind you, because we couldn't upload past few episodes because it was overloaded with hateful comments and, we just ran out of space as well. Now our space limits have been increased, so episodes are going to be up there once again. And yeah, you can go and click the donate button there to help our show directly with one-time donations. And of course, join our Discord. I'm pretty sure there are links on our Patreon and, mostly everywhere to find it out. And if you don't know how, you can always just email me at theeasternborder@gmail.com. And then, I'll give you all the instructions and all the links. Because posting them publicly, we're becoming a pretty big Discord, you see. About 1,000 people are there. And I know a lot of them lurk, but still. But now, now that I've gone through the shilling and everything, time to talk to Evita a bit. See, Evita here is special. She's grown up in in a bit of a mixed family, but I'll allow you to hear that from herself. So, Evita, hello, welcome to the Eastern Border. Once again, I know this is your second time, and I hope that you won't feel shy and, everyone's friendly here. But now, please, go on and talk about a bit yourself and what do you think about this matter until I prepare some questions for you.
Yeah, hi Kristaps. Happy to be here. About myself, yes, as you told already, I grew up in a very Russian-oriented environment. And as you said, I'm from mixed family. My dad is a Latvian and my mom is Polish-Belarusian. And I spent my childhood summers in a deep village in Belarus, basically nowhere, and Russian-oriented environment. What I mean by it, I had a lot of Russian childhood friends, met mainly Russians, friends of my family, movies, books, comedy shows, and so on.
Before we move forward, do you have any friends that you have lost contact with because of the war?
Actually, no. I have lost contact with my family because of the war. Because half of my family lives in Belarus and in Russia, and we can't communicate freely because they are extremely afraid for themselves.
Okay, so as we're talking about Russians here, and you're mostly Belarusian, how would you compare and how would you compare these two peoples? We all know Lukashenko is very pro-Russian, but culture-wise, how close are Belarusians and Russians?
In my childhood, as I noticed, especially young children tried to be as close to Russia as possible because for Belarus, as crazy as it sounds maybe to Westerners, after they have seen the realities of Russia, for Belarusians to live in Russia is a great improvement. And my friends actually strived for that, to live in Russia in the future. But adults I had contact with mostly were Poles, and of course they were not so eager to be Russian oriented.
Okay, but about the Russian women and Russian mothers, you know more about this than I do. So what's the attitude there? What's the general cultural feeling? Why are they kind of sacred there? Why isn't Putin just, well, besides the fact that their husbands might come with guns, why are they so complacent, so to speak? Why don't we see more revolutionary action there? They're sort of trying to do their protests, and this whole manifesto is the most open thing out there because the hatred is coming out finally. But it's very slow, and it's been almost 2 years of the war, and they're just worried about the situation. Explain to me and to the listeners how wives and women are treated in general in Russian culture.
You said they are presented as sacred and so on. I would say that's just a public image. How they are so proud of the mothers and so on, mostly because they are mothers of soldiers. So, of course, they need to be proud of them. They need to say how great of a human beings they are and so on. But in reality, there's no sacred in being a mother in Russia. That's more like everyday thing. That is a thing you must perceive as a woman, because as we know, Russia is more much more conservative and traditional culture, and being a mother there is, maybe obligation is not the best word for it, but it's your duty. It's only natural that you become a mother at one point in your life. So they don't receive so much praise for it, only publicly maybe.
Well, publicly they receive a lot of praise. I know they have a lot of culture of, babi shora нарожает, or the women will give birth to more. I thought that it was just quite the opposite thing. That the mothers, if you're a mother at least, then you get a lot of praise there. But then again, we've seen a lot about Russian dating things, and we've seen a lot about domestic violence and everything. What is the real situation then if it's not this kind of valuation of women as mothers?
You are just a workforce there that gives birth to children. That's what I would describe it like. You are not special. You are not to be. You are not to demand some special treatment. You go to work. You give birth to children. You work at home as well. On top of that, you go to work, and I would say that many women there are like workhorses.
Yes, but what then drives them to go to these protests? I mean, they have this attitude there, at least in the official treatment that the government portrays as saying that the wives of these mobilized only want their monetary kind of recompensations instead of their husbands back, and so they're trying to solve this problem by throwing money at the wives. Do you think it works, and why would it, and why wouldn't it?
Maybe it works only for a little bit while they are not desperate as much, but they are getting more desperate every day because their husbands are away for so long, and so many of them lost their husbands. And in Russia, to be alone is extremely hard. You marry not only because you fell in love with the opposite with the other human, but also because that's just the way of life as it is perceived there. It's hard to survive alone. You need to form those relationships.
Do you think some of these women, they would go and protest if the war wasn't going so bad? Would they actually be protesting out if the husbands would be still mobilized, but Russia would have made some gains or something?
That is actually a very interesting thing to think about. Let's say their husbands are treated just as badly, no rotation, no supplies, and so on. A lot of them die daily, but Russia is gaining a lot of progress. In that situation, I think even the society would turn against wives and mothers if they try to protest, because those lost lives of soldiers would seem as a worthy sacrifice.
Do you think maybe because of how women are traditionally treated inside the culture, and we've spoken a lot about on previous episodes of the show, not on the war specifically, but in the historical ones, about the whole family culture over there, do you think some of them at least would definitely prefer the compensation instead of their husbands returning?
I don't want to dehumanize Russian women and say, yes, of course, just look at their lives. Their husbands beat them all the time, and who wouldn't prefer to have a Lada instead? Not like you can have a Lada now, anyways. But I believe many of them are extremely scared of the government, because they know what it's capable of really well, and many lost their hope already, so they do their math and decide to maybe to take the compensation while it's still there, because if they say no, if they are as they maybe some say prideful and so on, there will be nothing left. No husband, no money, no lad, so to speak. And after all, in Russia, it's not about truth or justice. It's about survival.
Well, you say it's about survival, but that's a political question here. I'd like to end up with this because a lot of political analysts are stating that this could grow into something. Do you think this could possibly grow into something? Because again, I mentioned earlier that protests of women have traditionally started a lot of a lot of changes inside of Russia. Can this dissatisfaction lead to something serious, lead to some political changes, maybe, well, let's just say, make Putin's life a bit more difficult when the March and elections come?
Then I need to ask, when was the last time some dissatisfaction led to real governmental changes? I think that Russians, not only women but Russians as is, they don't know how to do it, how to fight for their rights. They need to learn it anew the hard way. And as long as mothers and wives of mobilized keep protesting quietly and playing by the rules of Putin, I think nothing will change. It maybe will be a little bit of problem for him, but nothing that can't be changed. And they really need, the mothers and wives really need support from the others, especially the mobilized, and they need to be aggressive to literally fight for their rights, not just beg. That's the only way I see something will change.
Oh, that's a bit grim, but it is what it is. At least that's the political movement that they currently have. Thank you, Evita. And that's it for today, comrades. And, well, something to think about. Something to think about to you, our women listeners. What would you do if your son would be mobilized? It makes you also kind of rethink how did things happen in the Vietnam War when the United States were in the draft and in a somewhat pointless situation there. Kind of interesting to compare and contrast. But we'll be back with the news as usual. До свидания, товарищи. And as always, remember, happiness is mandatory.